Chapter 1, The Signal. In the endless void of space, the vast expanse between stars stretched infinitely, a dark ocean punctuated by distant points of light. The crew of NASA's Space Shuttle Endeavour floated silently through this emptiness, engaged in what was supposed to be a routine maintenance operation on the International Space Station, ISS. The Earth, a brilliant blue and white marble, hung in the background, a comforting reminder of home. Colonel Jack Ryan, the mission commander, was a seasoned astronaut, having spent more time in space than most people spent in their careers. He had seen many strange phenomena during his missions, but nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold. It started with a blip on the radar. At first it was dismissed as an anomaly, a glitch in the system that could be easily explained away. But as the minutes passed, the blip persisted, growing stronger, more defined. It moved with a purpose, a trajectory that was deliberate, as if it was seeking something, or someone. "Colonel, you might want to take a look at this," said Lieutenant Rodriguez, the shuttle's pilot, his voice tinged with concern. Ryan floated over to the console, glancing at the screen. The blip was now unmistakable, a solid dot against the backdrop of space. It was approaching fast. "What the hell is that?" Ryan muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The blip was closing in on the ISS at an alarming rate. Ryan's heart raced as he instinctively reached for the radio. "Houston, we have a situation," he said, trying to keep his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Go ahead, Endeavour," came the calm, measured response from Mission Control. "We've got an unidentified object on a direct course to the ISS," Ryan reported. "It's moving fast. Can you identify the object?" Ryan glanced at the screen again. "Negative, Houston. No visual confirmation yet, but it's closing in fast. Stand by, Endeavour." Ryan exchanged glances with his second-in-command, Dr. Alara Hayes. Hayes was the mission's lead scientist, a brilliant mind with a calm demeanor that had earned her the respect of her peers. But now, her face reflected the same concern that Ryan felt. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Ryan ordered, his voice firm. But before the crew could react, the object came into view. It wasn't a piece of space debris or a lost satellite. It was something far more mysterious, and far more alive. Floating silently in the void just beyond the ISS was a figure. It was humanoid, with large, black eyes that seemed to absorb all the light around it. Its skin, a pale green, shimmered with an ethereal glow. What was most shocking, however, was that the being was not wearing a spacesuit. It hovered effortlessly in the vacuum of space, as if it belonged there, as if it had always been there. The creature's presence was both mesmerizing and terrifying. Ryan felt his breath catch in his throat as he stared at the alien being. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The creature extended its hand, a hand that was eerily similar to his own, and pointed towards the ISS. Ryan's mind raced. What did it want? Was it trying to communicate? Or was it a threat? The other astronauts, frozen in a mix of fear and awe, watched as the alien began to manipulate the tools and equipment as if it were familiar with them. It moved with a purpose, as if it were on a mission of its own, repairing a section of the ISS that had malfunctioned earlier in the mission. It was as if the creature knew exactly what needed to be done, and how to do it. Suddenly, the alien stopped and turned to face Ryan directly, its large eyes locking onto his. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, in a swift, deliberate motion, it reached out and placed a small, glowing device into Ryan's hand. The object pulsed gently, emitting a warmth that seemed to seep into his suit. Before Ryan could react, the alien moved away, drifting back into the shadows of space. In a matter of seconds, it was gone, leaving the crew of the Endeavour staring into the void, their minds racing with questions. "What the hell just happened?" whispered Lieutenant Rodriguez, breaking the silence. "I don't know," Ryan replied, still clutching the glowing device. "But whatever it was, we need to find out." Little did they know, this was only the beginning. The device in Ryan's hand would unlock secrets that had been buried for eons, leading them on a journey across the stars, one that would test the limits of their courage, their trust, and their very humanity. Chapter 2, The Device Back on Earth. The world was abuzz with news of the encounter. The footage captured by the Endeavour crew had been transmitted to NASA and immediately classified as top secret. But in the age of the internet, secrets were hard to keep. Leaks began to surface, and soon, the world knew of the alien visitor. Speculation ran rampant. Was it a peaceful visitor or a scout for an impending invasion? Scientists, politicians, and conspiracy theorists all weighed in, each with their own interpretation of the events. But amid the chaos, one fact remained clear: the alien had left something behind, a device that no one could explain. Back on the ground, Ryan and his crew were debriefed extensively. The device was taken from Ryan and brought to a secure lab deep within NASA's research facility. Dr. Hayes was assigned to lead the team tasked with studying the artifact. The device was small, about the size of a grapefruit, and made of a material that defied all known analysis. It was smooth to the touch, yet emitted a faint, pulsing light from within. No seams, no markings, no apparent means of activation. It was a puzzle, one that Hayes was determined to solve. Weeks passed, and despite the best efforts of the team, the device remained a mystery. It refused to open, refused to respond to any form of energy or signal they attempted to use on it. Frustration mounted as the world waited for answers. One night, as Hayes sat alone in the lab, poring over the data, something unexpected happened. The device, which had been dormant for weeks, suddenly came to life. It began to pulse with a bright, rhythmic light, casting strange shadows on the walls of the lab. Hayes watched in awe as the device slowly began to open, revealing a complex interior filled with intricate circuits and what appeared to be a holographic display. Symbols and patterns flashed across the display, none of which made any sense to her, but as she reached out to touch the device, something remarkable happened. The symbols on the display shifted and rearranged themselves into a form of text, English text. "Hello, Dr. Hayes," the text read. Hayes gasped, her heart pounding in her chest. How did it know her name? What was this device? The text continued to scroll across the display, faster now, as if it had been waiting for this moment. "I am the last of my kind, the keeper of knowledge long lost. This device holds the key to understanding the universe. But it also holds great danger. Use it wisely." Hayes stared at the device, her mind racing. This was no ordinary artifact, it was a repository of knowledge, knowledge that could change the course of history. But with that knowledge came a warning, one that she could not afford to ignore. She had to be careful, for the secrets contained within the device could either save humanity or lead to its destruction.
Chapter 3. The message. The next morning, Hayes briefed Ryan and the rest of the team on her discovery. The device, it seemed, was more than just a tool. It was a message, a communication from a civilization that had long since vanished. Ryan listened intently as Hayes explained what had happened. "It knows our language, Jack," she said, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "This device is like a library, a vault of knowledge. But it also comes with a warning, one that we need to take seriously." Ryan frowned, his mind racing. "What kind of warning?" Hayes hesitated before answering. "It said that the knowledge within the device could be dangerous if used improperly. We don't know what kind of technology or information is in there, but it's clear that we need to proceed with caution. Have you been able to access any of the information yet?" Ryan asked. Hayes shook her head. "Not yet. The device seems to be locked down. It allowed me to see that message, but beyond that, it's like it's waiting for something, maybe a key or a code to unlock the rest of its contents." Ryan nodded, deep in thought. "We need to figure out what that key is, and fast. If this device really is as powerful as it seems, we can't afford to let it fall into the wrong hands." But even as they spoke, forces beyond their control were already in motion. The leak about the alien encounter had caught the attention of powerful organizations, some within the government, others outside of it. These groups had their own agendas, and they were willing to do whatever it took to obtain the device and the secrets it held. Unbeknownst to the crew of the Endeavour, they were now at the center of a much larger game, one that spanned not just nations, but the entire galaxy. Chapter 4. The intruders had started with a break-in at the NASA facility. In the dead of night, a group of heavily armed men infiltrated the research lab where the device was being kept. They moved with military precision, disabling security systems and neutralizing guards with ruthless efficiency. Their objective was clear: retrieve the alien device at all costs. Dr. Hayes was working late in the lab when she heard the commotion. At first, she thought it was just another late-night drill, but the sound of gunfire quickly shattered that illusion. Panic surged through her as she realized that the facility was under attack. She grabbed the device and ran, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew she couldn't let it fall into the hands of whoever these intruders were. She had to get it to safety. As she fled through the darkened hallways, she could hear the footsteps of her pursuers growing closer. They were closing in, and she was running out of options. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her side as a bullet grazed her. She stumbled but kept running, clutching the device tightly. She could feel its warmth pulsing through her fingers, as if it were alive, guiding her. Just when she thought she couldn't run any further, a door burst open in front of her, and Ryan appeared, flanked by several security personnel. "Alara, this way," he shouted, motioning for her to follow. She didn't hesitate. Together, they sprinted down the corridor, dodging bullets as the security team provided cover fire. They reached a secure room at the far end of the facility and quickly barricaded themselves inside. Ryan locked the door and turned to Hayes, who was gasping for breath, blood seeping through her shirt. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "I'm fine," Hayes panted, wincing as she pressed her hand against her wound. "We need to protect the device. They can't get their hands on it." Ryan nodded grimly. "We'll hold them off as long as we can. Reinforcements are on the way." But the intruders were relentless. They had come prepared, and they weren't about to leave empty-handed. As the security team exchanged fire with the attackers, Hayes turned her attention to the device. It was glowing more intensely now, as if responding to the danger. Suddenly, the room was filled with a blinding light, and Hayes felt a strange sensation wash over her. A sense of calm and clarity, as if time itself had slowed down. The device was speaking to her again, but this time, it wasn't just words on a screen. It was as if the device was communicating directly with her mind, showing her visions of distant worlds, ancient civilizations, and advanced technologies beyond her wildest dreams. And then she saw it, the key to unlocking the device. It was a sequence, a pattern of symbols that she instinctively knew how to input. With trembling hands, she began to manipulate the device, entering the code that had been revealed to her. The device responded immediately, its glow intensifying as it began to unfold, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a small, crystal-like object that pulsed with energy. Hayes hesitated for only a moment before reaching out to touch it. The instant her fingers made contact with the crystal, a surge of knowledge flooded her mind. Information about the alien species, their history, their technology, and their warnings. She understood now why the device was so important, why it had to be protected at all costs. It wasn't just a repository of knowledge. It was a tool for survival, a means to protect humanity from threats both known and unknown. But before she could process everything she had learned, the door to the secure room was blown open, and the intruders stormed in, guns raised. Ryan and the security team fought back fiercely, but they were outnumbered. In the chaos, one of the intruders grabbed Hayes, forcing the device from her hands. "No!" she screamed, struggling to break free. But it was too late. The intruder, a tall man with a scar running down his face, sneered as he held the device up to the light, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "Thank you, Dr. Hayes," he said mockingly. "You've made our job much easier." Before she could respond, he knocked her out with the butt of his gun, sending her crashing to the floor. Ryan tried to reach her, but he was overpowered, dragged to the ground by two of the attackers. The last thing Hayes saw before she lost consciousness was the scarred man walking away with the device in his hand, leaving her world to unravel around her.
Chapter 5. The chase. When Hayes regained consciousness, she was in a hospital bed, her body aching and her head throbbing with pain. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was or what had happened. But then it all came rushing back: the attack, the device, the man with the scar. She bolted upright, wincing as the movement aggravated her wound. Ryan was sitting in a chair next to her bed, his face haggard and drawn. "Jack," she gasped, "the device, it's gone," Ryan said, his voice heavy with defeat. "They took it." Hayes felt a wave of despair wash over her. They had failed. The device, the key to humanity's survival, was in the hands of those who would use it for their own gain. "We have to get it back," she said urgently, her voice trembling. "You don't understand, Jack. That device, it's more than just a piece of alien technology. It's a warning, a lifeline. If they unlock its full potential, we know," Ryan interrupted, his expression grim. "The intel we've gathered suggests that the group responsible for the attack is a rogue faction with ties to several powerful organizations. They're after the same thing we are, the knowledge contained within the device. But they don't care about the consequences. They'll use it to gain power, to control." Hayes shook her head, panic rising in her chest. "We can't let that happen. We have to stop them." "And we will," Ryan said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "But we can't do it alone. We're assembling a team, some of the best minds and operatives in the world. We'll track them down, recover the device, and make sure it's safe." But Hayes knew it wouldn't be that simple. The rogue faction was highly organized, well-funded, and ruthless. They would stop at nothing to unlock the device's secrets, even if it meant putting the entire world at risk. The next few days were a blur of activity as Ryan and Hayes worked with the newly assembled team to track down the rogue faction. Every lead, every scrap of information was pursued relentlessly. They discovered that the faction had connections in multiple countries, with agents embedded in governments, corporations, and military organizations. It was a global network, one that had been operating in the shadows for years, but despite their best efforts, the faction remained elusive. They moved quickly, changing locations and identities at a moment's notice. It was like chasing ghosts, and then, finally, a break came. Through a combination of surveillance and intelligence, the team managed to track the faction to a remote location deep in the mountains of Eastern Europe. It was there, in an abandoned Cold War-era bunker, that they had set up their base of operations. The team moved in quickly, using the cover of night to approach the bunker undetected. They knew they had to be careful. The faction was well armed and highly trained. As they neared the entrance, Ryan signaled for the team to stop. He turned to Hayes, who was clad in tactical gear, a determined expression on her face. "You sure you're up for this?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "I have to be," Hayes replied. "We need to get that device back, Jack. No matter what." Ryan nodded, then gave the signal to move in. The team breached the bunker, sweeping through the dark corridors with military precision. They encountered resistance, but the element of surprise worked in their favor. They quickly subdued the guards and pressed forward. Finally, they reached the central chamber where the device was being kept. The room was filled with computers, monitors, and scientific equipment, all focused on the alien artifact, and there, standing in the center of the room, was the scarred man, holding the device in his hands. "Welcome," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I've been expecting you." Ryan leveled his weapon at the man. "Put the device down and step away." The scarred man smiled coldly. "I don't think so, Colonel. You see, we've already unlocked part of the device's secrets. It's incredible, really. The power contained within this small object is beyond anything you can imagine. And we're just getting started." Hayes stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the device. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. That device is more than just a source of power. It's a warning, a message from a civilization that destroyed itself because it couldn't handle what it created. If you keep going down this path, you'll doom us all." The scarred man laughed. "Doom? No, Doctor. This is salvation. This device will give us the power to reshape the world, to take control of our destiny. And I'm not about to let a bunch of self-righteous government lackeys get in the way." Without warning, he activated the device. A blinding light filled the room as the alien technology came to life, its power surging through the chamber. Hayes felt the energy wash over her, a sensation of both awe and terror. The device was alive, its power far greater than anything she had imagined. Ryan shouted for the team to fall back, but it was too late. The device unleashed a wave of energy that sent them crashing to the ground, their weapons rendered useless. As the light intensified, Hayes realized that the device was not just a tool, it was a weapon, one that could bend reality itself, and the scarred man was wielding it with reckless abandon. Enough! Hayes screamed, pushing herself to her feet. She lunged at the scarred man, desperate to stop him before it was too late, but as she reached for the device, it emitted a powerful shockwave that sent her flying across the room. Dazed and disoriented, Hayes struggled to regain her senses. She could see the scarred man standing triumphantly over her, the device glowing brighter with each passing second. "Goodbye, Doctor," he sneered. "You've lost." Hayes braced herself for the end, knowing there was nothing she could do to stop what was coming. But then, something unexpected happened. The device, seemingly of its own accord, began to react violently. The light grew blindingly intense, and the air crackled with energy. The scarred man's smile faltered as he realized he had lost control. "No, no," he shouted, desperately trying to shut the device down, but it was too late. The device was no longer responding to him, it was responding to something else, something far more powerful. With a final surge of energy, the device unleashed a catastrophic blast that tore through the bunker, collapsing walls and sending shockwaves through the mountains. Hayes was thrown to the ground, darkness closing in around her as the world crumbled, and then, there was nothing.
Chapter 6. The awakening. Hayes awoke to the sound of distant echoes. Her body was battered, and her head throbbed with pain. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The memories of the past few hours were a blur, a jumbled mix of fear, determination, and devastation. But as her vision cleared, she realized she was still alive, buried under a pile of rubble deep within the collapsed bunker. The air was thick with dust, and the light from the outside world was almost non-existent, filtering through cracks in the debris. Slowly, she pushed herself up, wincing at the pain in her side. Her hand brushed against something cold and hard, and she recognized it immediately. The alien device that IT was still intact, but it had dimmed significantly, no longer pulsing with the same energy as before. Hayes picked it up, cradling it in her hands, as the memories of what had happened came flooding back. The scarred man, the device, the blast, everything was a blur of chaos and power. But what had happened? Had the device saved her? Had it somehow recognized the danger and taken action on its own? She had no answers, only questions, and the urgent need to find out what had happened to the others. Ryan, the team, were they alive? Or had they been lost in the destruction? Using what strength she had left, Hayes began to crawl through the debris, searching for a way out. The bunker had been reduced to a twisted maze of collapsed ceilings and crushed walls, but she pressed on, determined to find her way to safety. That as she crawled, the device remained in her hands, a faint warmth still emanating from it, as if it were guiding her. Every now and then, the light within it would flicker, almost like a heartbeat, reminding her that there was more to this artifact than she understood. After what felt like an eternity, Hayes finally saw a sliver of daylight ahead. Summoning her last reserves of energy, she pushed through the remaining debris and emerged into the open air. The sight that greeted her was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The mountain range, once majestic and serene, had been scarred by the blast. Trees were uprooted, rocks were shattered, and the bunker was now little more than a smoldering ruin. But despite the devastation, there was life. A few members of the team were scattered around the area, some injured, others helping each other to their feet. Among them, she saw Ryan, alive and conscious, though battered and bruised. Hayes stumbled towards him, relief flooding through her as he turned and saw her. "Ilara," Ryan called out, rushing to her side. "Thank God you're okay." "Jack, the device." Hayes panted, holding up the alien artifact. "It's still here. It's still active." Ryan looked at the device, then back at Hayes, his expression a mix of awe and concern. "What happened in there?" Hayes shook her head. "I don't know. The device, it reacted on its own. I think it recognized the danger, and it had stopped him. It stopped the scarred man. But I don't understand how or why. Ryan helped her to her feet, his mind racing as he processed what she was saying. We need to get you back to base, get you checked out. We'll figure this out together. As they made their way to the makeshift medical station that had been set up, Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed. The device, the knowledge it contained, the power it held. It was all part of something much larger, something she and the team had only begun to uncover. And as the dust settled around them, she knew that their journey was far from over. The device had saved them, but it had also opened a door to a new reality, one that would challenge everything they knew about the universe and their place in it.
Chapter 7. The revelation. Back at the base, Hayes was treated for her injuries, but her mind remained focused on the device. She couldn't let it out of her sight, not after everything that had happened. The knowledge it contained was too valuable, too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. As she recovered, she spent every waking moment studying the device, trying to understand its secrets. She knew now that it was more than just a tool, it was a living entity, a piece of technology so advanced that it seemed to have a consciousness of its own, but the more she studied it, the more questions arose. The device had protected her, saved her from certain death, but why? What was its purpose? And what did it mean for humanity? One night, as she sat alone in her lab, the device began to glow again, brighter than ever before. Hayes watched in awe as the light filled the room, and a familiar sensation washed over her, the same sense of calm and clarity she had felt in the bunker. This time, however, the device did more than just communicate with her. It showed her visions of distant worlds, ancient civilizations, and a galaxy teeming with life. It showed her the rise and fall of empires, the discovery of knowledge, and the dangers of unchecked power, but most importantly, it showed her a path that humanity could take to avoid the mistakes of the past. A path that would lead to a future where humans and aliens could coexist, where knowledge and technology could be used for the greater good. Hayes was overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was seeing. The device was offering her the key to understanding the universe, but it was also offering her a choice that would determine the fate of humanity. As the visions faded, the device's light dimmed, and Hayes was left alone in the darkness, her mind racing with possibilities. She knew what she had to do. She had to share this knowledge, but she also had to protect it. The power contained within the device was too great to be wielded by any one person or group. It had to be safeguarded, used only for the benefit of all. But how could she ensure that? How could she prevent the same mistakes that had led to the downfall of the civilization that had created the device? The answer came to her in a moment of clarity. She would create a council, a group of the world's greatest minds, representing all nations and all walks of life. Together, they would study the device, learn from it, and ensure that its knowledge was used responsibly. But she also knew that there would be those who would try to take the device for themselves, to use its power for their own gain. She would need to be vigilant, to protect the device and the knowledge it contained at all costs. With a newfound sense of purpose, Hayes set to work, reaching out to the leaders of the world, to scientists, philosophers, and visionaries. She explained the situation, shared what she had learned, and invited them to join her in this endeavor. To her surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. The world had seen the footage of the encounter with the alien, had witnessed the devastation caused by the rogue faction. People were ready for change, ready to come together for the greater good, and so, the council was formed, a diverse group of individuals united by a common goal, to study the device, to unlock its secrets, and to use its knowledge to build a better future for all. But even as they began their work, Hayes knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, dangers, and sacrifices. But she was determined to see it through, to ensure that the knowledge contained within the device was used wisely. And as the council gathered for their first meeting, Hayes couldn't help but feel a sense of hope, a hope that, despite the dangers and the unknowns, humanity was on the verge of something extraordinary. Chapter 8. The test months passed, and the council made significant progress in understanding the device. They had deciphered more of its contents, unlocking advanced technologies that had the potential to revolutionize energy, medicine, and communication. The knowledge contained within the device was vast, and the council worked tirelessly to ensure that it was used for the benefit of all, but as their work continued, a new threat began to emerge. Reports started to surface of strange occurrences around the world, unexplained phenomena, disruptions in communication systems, and sightings of unidentified flying objects. The council was concerned that the device's activation had attracted the attention of other alien species, some of whom might not be as benevolent as the one they had encountered. The situation came to a head when a massive alien ship appeared in orbit around Earth. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, an enormous, sleek vessel that dwarfed the ISS and cast a shadow over the planet below. The ship made no attempt to communicate, nor did it display any signs of aggression. It simply hung in orbit, watching. The council was on high alert. They knew that the arrival of the ship could mean many things, none of them good. They had to determine whether this was a friend or foe, and they had to do it quickly. Hayes and Ryan were among those chosen to lead the mission to make contact with the ship. They boarded a shuttle equipped with the latest technology developed from the device and set out for the alien vessel. As they approached, the ship's size and scale became even more apparent. It was a behemoth, covered in strange markings and glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. "Steady," Ryan murmured as they neared the ship's hull. "We don't want to provoke them." Hayes nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that this moment could determine the future of humanity, and the weight of that responsibility was almost overwhelming. The shuttle docked with the alien ship, and the crew prepared to disembark. They were met by a contingent of the ship's inhabitants, humanoid beings who, like the first alien, did not wear any form of spacesuit. They were taller and more slender than humans, with elongated limbs and pale, luminescent skin. The leader of the group stepped forward, speaking in a language that Hayes couldn't understand. But as the alien continued to speak, the device in Hayes' possession began to react, translating the words in real time. "Welcome," the alien said, its voice echoing in the minds of the crew. "We are the Nari, and we come in peace. We have been observing your progress with the artifact and are here to offer our assistance." Hayes felt a surge of relief, but also wariness. "Why now?" she asked. "Why reveal yourselves now, after all this time?" The Nari leader's expression was unreadable. "We have been monitoring the artifact for many cycles. Its activation triggered a signal that alerted us to its presence. We are the custodians of the knowledge it contains, and we are here to ensure that it is used responsibly." Hayes exchanged a glance with Ryan. "And if we refuse your assistance?" The Nari leader tilted its head slightly. "Refusal would be unwise. The knowledge within the artifact is powerful, and with great power comes great responsibility. We have seen civilizations rise and fall because they were not prepared for what they uncovered. We do not wish to see your species suffer the same fate." Hayes felt a chill run down her spine. The Nari were offering help, but there was an implicit threat in their words: refuse, and face the consequences. "What kind of assistance are you offering?" Ryan asked, his voice carefully neutral. "We will guide you in unlocking the remaining secrets of the artifact," the Nari leader replied. "But we will also impose limits. There are certain technologies, certain pieces of knowledge, that are not meant for your species at this time. We will help you advance, but at a pace that ensures stability and safety." Hayes knew that this was likely the best offer they were going to get. The Nari were clearly more advanced, and they had the upper hand. The council would need to tread carefully, balancing the benefits of the Nari's knowledge with the need to maintain human autonomy. "We accept your assistance," Hayes said finally, the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. "But we do so with the understanding that humanity will remain in control of its own destiny." The Nari leader inclined its head. "Agreed. We will work together, but know this: the path ahead is not without challenges. There are others in the galaxy who would see the artifact destroyed, who would see your species suppressed. Be vigilant, for not all who possess knowledge use it wisely." With that, the Nari led the crew deeper into the ship, where they began to share their knowledge and technology. The partnership between humanity and the Nari was officially underway, but even as Hayes and Ryan worked with the Nari, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that there were forces at play that they didn't yet understand. Chapter 9: The Infiltration. As the weeks passed, the collaboration between humanity and the Nari proved to be fruitful. New technologies were developed, and the Council worked diligently to ensure that the knowledge was used for the benefit of all. The Nari were true to their word, providing guidance and support while allowing humanity to maintain its autonomy, but beneath the surface, tensions were brewing. Not everyone on Earth was pleased with the idea of alien interference, and there were those who believed that the Nari had ulterior motives. Conspiracy theories began to circulate, and protests erupted in several major cities, fueled by fear and distrust. Within the Council itself, there were whispers of dissent. Some members argued that humanity should take control of the artifact and push the Nari out, believing that the alien race was holding them back. Others feared that any move against the Nari would lead to disaster. Hayes found herself caught in the middle of this growing divide. As one of the key figures in the Council, she was trusted by many, but she also knew that there were those who resented her for her role in bringing the Nari to Earth. The situation reached a boiling point when a group of rebels infiltrated the Council's headquarters. They were well organized and well armed, determined to seize the artifact and force the Nari to leave Earth. The attack came without warning. In the dead of night, the rebels stormed the facility, overpowering the security forces and making their way to the chamber where the artifact was being kept. Hayes was in her quarters when the alarms went off. She grabbed her comm device and activated the emergency protocols, but the rebels had already breached the control room, disabling the security systems. She had no choice but to confront them herself. Rushing through the darkened corridors, Hayes could hear the sounds of gunfire and shouts echoing through the facility. The rebels were moving quickly, and she knew she had to stop them before they reached the artifact. As she rounded a corner, she came face to face with a group of rebels. They were armed and ready, their faces hidden behind masks. "Dr. Hayes," one of them said, his voice cold and mechanical. "Step aside. We're taking the artifact." Hayes stood her ground. "You don't understand what you're doing. If you take the artifact, you'll doom us all." The rebel leader stepped forward, his eyes burning with conviction. "No, Dr. Hayes. We're saving humanity. The Nari have been manipulating us, controlling us. It's time to take back what's ours." Before Hayes could respond, the rebels opened fire. She dove behind a nearby console, narrowly avoiding the bullets as they tore through the air. She had no weapon, no way to defend herself. Her only hope was to reach the artifact before the rebels did. As the rebels advanced, Hayes made a split-second decision. She bolted from her cover, sprinting down the corridor towards the artifact chamber. She could hear the rebels shouting behind her, their footsteps pounding as they gave chase. She reached the chamber just as the door was sliding open. Inside, the artifact glowed softly, its presence a beacon of hope and power. But as she entered the chamber, she realized that she wasn't alone. Standing before the artifact was the Nari leader, its expression unreadable. "Dr. Hayes," the Nari said calmly. "You should not be here." "The rebels, they're coming for the artifact," Hayes gasped, struggling to catch her breath. "We have to stop them." The Nari leader nodded. "I am aware. But there is more at play here than you realize." Before Hayes could ask what the Nari meant, the rebels burst into the chamber, weapons raised. "Step away from the artifact," the rebel leader shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. The Nari leader did not move. "You do not understand the consequences of your actions. This artifact is not just a tool, it is a guardian, a protector of knowledge. If you take it, you will unleash forces you cannot control." "Enough," the rebel leader snapped. "We're not falling for your lies. The artifact belongs to humanity, and we're taking it back." With that, the rebels opened fire. The Nari reacted with lightning speed, its body moving in a blur as it deflected the bullets with a shimmering force field. But even as it defended itself, Hayes could see that the Nari was holding back, trying not to harm the humans. "Please, stop," Hayes pleaded, stepping between the rebels and the Nari. This isn't the way. But the rebels were beyond reason. They fired again, and this time, one of the bullets found its mark, striking the Nari in the chest. The alien staggered, its force field flickering as it struggled to maintain its defense. No! Hayes screamed, rushing to the Nari's side as it collapsed to the floor. The rebels moved in, their eyes fixed on the artifact, but before they could reach it, the artifact reacted. A blinding light filled the chamber, and a powerful energy wave emanated from the artifact, knocking the rebels off their feet. Hayes felt the energy wash over her, and for a moment, she was overwhelmed by a sense of weightlessness, as if she were floating in a vast, endless void. And then, the artifact spoke. "Enough," it said, its voice resonating in her mind. "You have proven yourselves unworthy of the knowledge I possess. But I will not allow this conflict to destroy you. I will protect the knowledge, and I will guide those who seek to use it wisely." The light intensified, and Hayes felt herself being lifted off the ground, her body enveloped in a cocoon of energy. When the light finally dimmed, she found herself back on solid ground, the chamber eerily silent. The rebels were gone, vanished without a trace. The Nari leader lay unconscious beside her, its body still glowing faintly with the energy of the artifact, and the artifact itself had changed. Its once glowing surface was now dark and dormant, as if it had expended all its power. Hayes knelt beside the Nari, gently placing a hand on its shoulder. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "We failed you." The Nari leader stirred, its eyes slowly opening. "You did not fail, Dr. Hayes. The artifact has chosen to protect the knowledge it holds. It will guide those who seek to use it wisely, but it will no longer tolerate those who seek to exploit it." Hayes nodded, tears streaming down her face. "What happens now?" "The artifact will remain here, safeguarded by those who are worthy. It will continue to guide humanity, but it will do so on its own terms. As for the rebels, they have been removed from this reality. Their fate is not for us to decide." Hayes didn't fully understand what the Nari meant, but she knew that the artifact had made its choice. It would protect the knowledge it held, but it would also ensure that humanity did not misuse it. As she helped the Nari to its feet, she couldn't help but feel a sense of both loss and hope. The artifact's power was beyond anything they had ever imagined, but it was also a reminder of the responsibility that came with such knowledge. "Thank you," Hayes said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "For everything." The Nari leader inclined its head. "We are all custodians of knowledge, Dr. Hayes. The artifact has chosen you to continue this work. Use the knowledge wisely, and ensure that it benefits all of humanity." With those words, the Nari turned and left the chamber, its form fading into the shadows as it returned to its ship. Hayes watched it go, her heart heavy with the weight of the responsibility that had been placed upon her. The artifact had chosen her, but it was a choice that came with a price. As she stood alone in the chamber, she knew that the journey ahead would be long and difficult. There would be challenges, dangers, and sacrifices. But she was determined to see it through, to ensure that the knowledge contained within the artifact was used for the greater good. And as she left the chamber, the artifact glowing softly in her hands, she knew that humanity's future was in her hands. Chapter 10. The legacy. Years passed, and the world changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The knowledge contained within the artifact had been used to revolutionize technology, medicine, and communication. The world had become a better place, but it had also become a more complex and dangerous one. The council had grown in size and influence, with representatives from all nations working together to ensure that the knowledge was used responsibly. But there were still those who sought to exploit it, those who believed that the artifact's power should be theirs to control. Hayes had become a symbol of the new world, a leader and a guide for those who sought to use the knowledge wisely. She had dedicated her life to protecting the artifact and ensuring that it remained a force for good, but she also knew that the challenges were far from over. The artifact had made its choice, but there were still those who would try to take it, who would try to use its power for their own gain. As she stood in the chamber where the artifact was kept, now a secure and heavily guarded facility, she couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought her here. The encounters with the Nari, the battles with the rebels, the revelations of the artifact's power, all of it had led to this moment. The artifact had chosen her, but it had also chosen humanity. It had given them the tools to build a better future, but it had also given them a warning that they could not ignore. As Hayes placed her hand on the artifact, she felt a sense of peace. The knowledge contained within it was vast, but it was also a reminder of the responsibility that came with such power. "We'll protect it," she whispered, her voice filled with determination. "We'll ensure that it's used wisely." And as she left the chamber, the artifact glowing softly in the darkness, she knew that the journey was far from over. The future was uncertain, but it was also filled with hope, a hope that humanity would rise to the challenge and build a world where knowledge was used for the greater good. The legacy of the artifact would live on, a testament to the power of knowledge and the responsibility that came with it. And as Hayes looked to the stars, she knew that the journey was just beginning.